Welcome to the Big 12, a 4-part series unraveling the history of the conference. This episode, we wrap up the series detailing the final hours of the Big 12.
I'm a man! I'm 40!
It's 2014, and it's the inaugural year of the college football playoff. This was the year of the two DFW private schools of the Big 12. Baylor, the defending conference champions, was expected to be a top 10 team with the return of senior quarterback Bryce Petty. TCU, a newcomer to the conference, on the other hand, was not even ranked in the preseason polls. That would change quickly when TCU, led by junior quarterback Trevon Boykin, upset number 4 Oklahoma in their first conference game of the season, 37-33. Not even midway through the season, number 5 Baylor and number 9 TCU, both undefeated, would square off in Waco in a very important shootout. And it was TCU who led 58-37 in the fourth quarter.
Running the football here in the fourth quarter. I said earlier Baylor might run 100 plays. That was number 100. Here's 101. Touchdown! Yards in 5 plays. All by himself in that backfield. 4th and 3. Boykin gonna loft one deep on the sideline. Broken up. Baylor's gonna get it back. Have gone 1:23 and then 59 seconds. It's an eternity for them right now, and they keep it on the ground. And it's Linwood for 9. Petty, play action. Pumps now, goes long. Man there, in and out of the hands of Norwood. And a flag down. Down and 4 for Bryce Petty. And they keep it on the ground. And it's a first down run by Linwood again. And he's still going. But if he hits this, he'll be the biggest man on campus. Chris Callahan from 28 for the most improbable of comebacks and the win. He got it.
You blew it!
Baylor would score 24 unanswered points to close out a comeback for the ages. Unfortunately, just a week later, Baylor would travel to West Virginia and fall flat in the fourth quarter in a 41-27 loss. 2 years prior, West Virginia, led by star quarterback Geno Smith, beat Baylor by a basketball score of 70-63. Baylor still hasn't won in Morgantown to this date. From 2014 TCU, 82 points in a conference game, fueled by 433 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions from TCU quarterback Boykin. Oh, you see that Mahomes kid for Texas Tech? Texas Tech quarterback Patrick Mahomes would take over the starting job later that season, and his 598 yards and 6 touchdowns was almost enough to upset Baylor. But Baylor would survive, and the Bears, ranked number 6, would finish 11-1 with a vital win against number 9 Kansas State on College Game Day to close out the season. And TCU, as usual, would beat Texas. This time, number 5 TCU would waltz into Austin and win 48-10 and rise to number 3 in the nation heading into the final week of the season. Okay, quick important note on these rankings. With the college football playoff, there would no longer be a formula like in the BCS days. A committee, like the one pictured, would make the rankings themselves, and this was their first year doing so. It's okay though, this wasn't a 2-team championship. It was a massive 4-team playoff, plenty of room to make sure everyone's included. It's not like, oh no, there were 6 playoff candidates, 2 from the Big 12 and 1 from each of the other 4 premier conferences, now known as the Power 5. Worse, unlike the other 4 for the Power 5, the Big 12 didn't have a conference championship game anymore, so TCU and Baylor would not play again. Alabama, Oregon, and undefeated Florida State would win their conference championships and secure the top 3 of the playoff. But who would be number 4? Heading into the final week of the season, after a 48-10 win against Texas at Austin, TCU jumped to number 3 in the committee rankings, even ahead of undefeated Florida State. Ohio State was number 5, and Baylor was number 6. TCU had an impressive resume, but 2 major concerns stuck out. One, of course, they have a head-to-head disadvantage against Baylor. The other, which isn't their fault at all, they were only playing against a 2-9 Iowa State team during conference championship week. Then, there's Baylor, whose loss to West Virginia was concerning, but they had the head-to-head advantage against TCU, and they won against a top 10 team on College game day during conference championship week. Of course, Baylor was only number 6 in the committee rankings though, so they'd have to pass Ohio State. After Ohio State's senior quarterback Braxton Miller won the best in the nation, would get injured and miss the season, it would be up to freshman JT Barrett to take over. He eventually would have a solid career, but an early setback against Virginia Tech, who would only finish 6-6, a 35-21 loss at home, knocked the Buckeyes off the radar. Ohio State kept winning though, and went into the Big Ten championship game with an 11-1 record. JT Barrett would get injured in their final game against Michigan though, and would miss the rest of the season. So the Buckeyes would be down to third-string quarterback Cardale Jones in the Big Ten championship game. Wisconsin wasn't even a top 10 team, but they were actually favored by 4 points to win this game since the Buckeyes were down to a third-string quarterback who had yet to make his first collegiate start. If Wisconsin won, the committee would have to pick TCU or Baylor.
You what?
59-0. The Buckeyes absolutely demolished Wisconsin and made a compelling case even down 2 quarterbacks. But Ohio State was only 5th in the rankings, and they were actually 6th in both the AP and Coaches Poll, but they weren't part of the formula anymore. Now, if you're curious what the old BCS system would have done with the old formula, Ohio State would have been number 4 just ahead of TCU. Baylor didn't have great computer metrics. But what would the committee do? If they weren't going to pick Ohio State, who would it be? You could make an argument for TCU or Baylor, but hang on a second. Shouldn't someone be declared conference champions of the Big 12? Using the traditional head-to-head tiebreaker, that would mean Baylor was Big 12 champions. Or did it? According to Big 12 bylaws, that wasn't the case here. The head-to-head tiebreaker would only be used to determine the representative for one of the New Year's 6 bowls if both teams finished outside the top 4. It didn't matter for playoff consideration. Quick note, the New Year's 6 bowls are basically like the BCS bowls, besides the BCS National Championship, the premier bowls for teams who just missed the cut. Out of the 6 bowls, 2 host the playoff semifinals, and the other 4 host 8 other teams, 5 of which are locked for the champions of the Power 5 conferences, and 1 spot saved for the best of the Group of 5 conference champions. Anyway, it was a tie between Baylor and TCU in the standings, and the Big 12 had to break that tie. After all, didn't you see their PSA that aired in July 2014, just a month before the season? So, who was it?
¿Por qué no los dos?
You what? You blew it!
In the words of Andy Staples of Sports Illustrated, presenting trophies to 2 teams is like presenting engagement rings to 2 women. Both feel less special, and the odds of either finding happiness at the end of the aisle are significantly reduced. Link to the article in the description. Number 5 Baylor, as a Big 12 representative for their automatic New Year's 6 bowl bid though, would face number 8 Michigan State in the Cotton Bowl, which is where the Sean Oakman meme came from. Unlike their loss to TCU, but much like their loss to West Virginia, the fourth quarter would come back to bite Baylor against Michigan State, causing them to blow a 41-19 lead and lose by 1.
You blew it!
Number 6 TCU would get a New Year's 6 invite as an at-large, and the Frogs would absolutely dismantle number 9 Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl 42-3. Anyway, the Big 12 would adopt a head-to-head tiebreaker the following offseason. It's 2015, and the Big 12 needs to rebound and crack the new college football playoff. There would be 4 contenders fighting for the throne, and no, Texas will not be one of them. Enter preseason number 2 TCU, a defending co-champion led by a senior trio of dual-threat quarterback Trevon Boykin, running back Aaron Green, and wide receiver Josh Doxson. Baylor, the other defending co-champion, was preseason number 4, led by a junior trio of dual-threat quarterback Seth Russell, running back Shock Linwood, and wide receiver Corey Coleman. Don't forget the Thunder, Andrew Billings, and Lightning, Sean Oakman, of their defense. They were unranked, but Oklahoma State had some NFL faces you may recognize. Running back Chris Carson, wide receiver James Washington, and defensive end Emmanuel Ogba. And Oklahoma State had a committee of their own, a quarterback by committee. Mason Rudolph, only a sophomore, was the main starter, but the dual-threat senior J.W. Walsh would take over in the red zone. Our last contender, Oklahoma, still coached by Bob Stoops, added a new face this offseason. Offensive coordinator and mastermind Lincoln Riley. Also, there's some walk-on from Texas Tech. Back in 2013, he led the Red Raiders to a 5-0 start, but suffered a knee injury and wasn't offered a scholarship by head coach at the time, Cliff Kingsbury. That walk-on was Baker Mayfield, and he had transferred to Oklahoma. And he had some weapons, such as experienced receivers Sterling Shepard and D.D. West, as well as running backs Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. Oklahoma had a close call at Tennessee in double overtime, and they would eventually fall to 2-4 rival Texas, who would only finish 5-7 that season. Number 14 Oklahoma was electric besides these 2 games though, and they would enter November with just 1 loss. In-state rival number 12 Oklahoma State entered November with no losses. Number 2 Baylor entered November with no losses. And rival TCU.
Boykin throwing too tall. It was pulled in. Green caught it. Do you believe it? Aaron Green off for the into the waiting hands of Aaron Green for only his 3rd catch of the season.
And credit Aaron Green for getting in the end zone. A lot of running backs wouldn't think to try to follow the ball in the play.
After a very close shootout against Texas Tech and quarterback Patrick Mahomes, number 5 TCU entered November with no losses. Up to this point, none of these 4 teams had played against each other, and Oklahoma would have to play against all 3 in 3 consecutive weeks, 2 games of which were on the road. At Baylor, Oklahoma handled business. Note that Baylor's starting quarterback Seth Russell broke his neck a couple games prior, so it was up to freshman quarterback Jared Stidham, who would have a pretty good college career, but was thrown into the fire mid-season. Speaking of injuries, heading back home, Oklahoma would face a TCU team without Boykin or Doxson. However, Oklahoma quarterback Baker Mayfield would get injured near halftime and miss the entire second half. Up 23-7 at halftime, Oklahoma would only score 7 more points the whole game as quarterback Trevor Knight really struggled. Oklahoma's only touchdown of the half was a 72-yard run from running back Perine. But TCU's second-string quarterback wasn't much better. Freshman Foster Sawyer would start, but would be replaced after throwing 3 interceptions and allowing TCU to fall behind 30-13. Third-string quarterback, senior Bram Kohlhausen, would come in and nearly lead TCU back to victory against a Baker-less Oklahoma. However, a couple of failed 2-point conversions would make the difference, and Oklahoma would be victorious 30-29. Oklahoma still had 1 game left, though. Bedlam. Oh, and it turns out starting quarterback Mason Rudolph would be injured, so no quarterback by committee for this game. It was all on J.W. Walsh. Turns out that really wasn't the problem though. Oklahoma State's defense got absolutely steamrolled by Oklahoma's running back duo. Even Baker Mayfield was quite effective on the ground. Just like that, Oklahoma was conference champions for the first time in 5 years, and they would snag the number 4 seed in the playoff to represent the Big 12 in the college football playoff for the first time. Oklahoma would take on number 1 Clemson, and the Sooners would lead 17-16 at halftime, but Clemson, led by dual-threat quarterback Deshaun Watson and running back Wayne Gallman, ran over Oklahoma, accounting for almost 300 combined yards and 3 combined touchdowns on the ground. It's 2016. That summer, the Big 12 considered expansion. After all, they were the only Power 5 conference without 12 teams, despite being named the Big 12. The Big 12 had a different idea though. Forget expansion, let's just bring back the conference championship game without divisions. Starting in 2017, the Big 12 championship game would be back, pairing up the two top teams in the conference to square off in Jerry World, now known as AT&T Stadium. But that wouldn't start until 2017, so one more season without the conference championship game. On a much sadder note, this offseason, we learned there was a sexual assault scandal going on in Waco. It's a really terrible thing to see, so I'll let you educate yourself on it. Speaking strictly about football, head coach Art Briles was fired, President Ken Starr resigned, and several Baylor players like quarterback Jarrett Stidham transferred out. Heading into the 2016 season, Oklahoma lost Sterling Shepard, who would be too busy partying with Victor Cruz and Odell Beckham into the NFL playoffs as a rookie in the league, but expectations were high at OU as they were ranked number 3 in the preseason polls, but in their opening game,
Herman finding his wife. The Houston Cougars are the new darlings of college football. They knock off Oklahoma 33-23.
Yes, that's Tom Herman, who would become Texas' head coach the following season. He was also Ohio State's offensive coordinator during that 2014 title run. Greg Ward, now a wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, was an electrifying dual-threat quarterback for the Cougs. Oklahoma would also fall to Ohio State at home 45-24. Remember this for next season. Oklahoma's national title hopes were done, but the Sooners would recover and go undefeated in Big 12 play to defend their conference title. This was the 5th, and to this date, the last time a Big 12 team went undefeated in conference play. Oh yeah, and that epic game between Oklahoma and Texas Tech happened. Needless to say, Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes would both be top 10 picks in the NFL draft. And you know what happened with Mahomes. It's 2017, and Oklahoma was actually left out of the preseason top 6, as they had a lot of new faces such as brand new wideouts Marquise Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Plus, head coach Bob Stoops had just retired, so this was Lincoln Riley's first year as head coach. Quarterback Baker Mayfield and tight end Mark Andrews were back though, and Baker had some loose ends to tie up. Oklahoma wasn't supposed to upset number 2 Ohio State on the road, but they did, as Baker passed for 386 yards and 3 touchdowns. Then, this happened.
He's to the 45, he's to the 50. Oh, no, he's not. No, he's not going to plant it in the midfield of the O, is he? Wow. Yes, he is. Ooh. Looks like the Ohio State band has come out of their seats. They didn't like that. There's no one here to defend the O except the band. Wow. But if the Buckeyes in the locker room saw that, they might come out and take issue. Now they're going to dance on the block O.
Yet, Oklahoma would fall a month later to Iowa State. Link to the article in the description. Iowa State wasn't exactly successful on the gridiron, but that would all change under a new coach. Matt Campbell meant business, and he would rebuild the Cyclones into an actual contender. Literally the day before they would take on Oklahoma at Norman, starting quarterback Jacob Park would take a leave of absence from the team due to medical reasons. Enter quarterback Kyle Kempt, who is pictured next to star running back David Montgomery. Making his first collegiate start, Kyle Kempt lit up Oklahoma's defense and helped put Iowa State back on the radar. Another neat story, quarterback Joel Lanning would convert to linebacker to help contribute to the team. Oklahoma would also have to face TCU, who was led by Texas A&M transfer Kenny Hill. Hill would lead TCU to the Big 12 championship game and a comeback victory in the Alamo Bowl against Pac-12 runner-up Stanford. However, Oklahoma handled business against TCU twice that season, winning their 3rd straight Big 12 title. And the Sooners would be the number 2 seed in the playoff, the only time the Big 12 has gotten a seed other than number 4 in the playoff to this date. They would face number 3 Georgia, who is known for choking along with the whole state. And Baker Mayfield, now a senior, was the Heisman Trophy winner. This was prime time for Oklahoma and the Big 12 to make a playoff run.
Play clock winding down in this 3rd and 9 play. It's a screen. Brown in the clear. The sprinter cuts back. Hollywood Brown slips down inside the 15. It's a reverse. Lamb throws it to the quarterback, and Mayfield catches a touchdown pass. In the backfield. Sooners showed some pressure, but back off. Fromm steps up, delivers a strike across the middle. Catch made by Godwin.
Overset
Chubb, it's the wild dog and the running back. Direct snap, cuts back and scores. Mayfield has time, flips it short. Brown, a long way to go. Slips one tackle, spin. Deflected. Blocked. The Dogs do it again. Clear on a direct snap. Now it's Michel's turn, running all the way. Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
After leading 31-14, Oklahoma would fall in double overtime to Georgia, who, sure enough, would then choke themselves against Alabama in another SEC exclusive national championship. It's 2018. With Baker Mayfield going pro as the #1 overall pick in the draft, there's a new face in Norman, transferring from Texas A&M quarterback Kyler Murray. But there was more than just OU. After a tough 1-3 start, Iowa State decided to make a quarterback change. Enter freshman Brock Purdy. Iowa State would go on a 5-win streak, including wins at number 25 Oklahoma State and against number 6 West Virginia, who we need to talk about. Transferring out of Florida, quarterback Will Grier was at the helm for West Virginia, and he had 2 senior studs as weapons. Former quarterback and touchdown machine David Sills and Gary Jennings, who you'll see in just a second.
Snaps it anyway. Grier lobs it in the air. Oh! What a catch, Gary Jennings! Touchdown, West Virginia! Grier in the gun. Grier, quarterback run. Grier! He got it! Touchdown! 2-point conversion for West Virginia. But a flag. Grier flashed the horns down. We saw Sills draw a flag after a touchdown earlier in the game. This is going to be an unsportsmanlike after the 2-point conversion.
An appropriate time for horns down. And speaking of Texas, let's just ignore this. Just a month after losing to Maryland.
Oh my goodness, the pressure. Hard to watch. And it's all on the shoulders of a freshman. Earthquake! He hit it! Dicker! The kicker! 48-45 Texas!
And upset undefeated rival Oklahoma in Texas. Following the game, Oklahoma would fire longtime defensive coordinator Mike Stoops, but their defense would only get worse without him. As for Texas, this road game at 4-3 Oklahoma State wouldn't be too easy.
The Oklahoma Sooners are a big winner after watching their rival, State pull off the upset.
Cornelius took a knee and Brecken Hager came flying in. I'll tell you what, Herman is absolutely...
Everything's bigger in Texas, including egos. Texas's playoff hopes were officially over. After West Virginia, despite absolutely lighting up Oklahoma's defense through the air, the Sooners' offense rolled as a trio of quarterback Kyler Murray, running back Kennedy Brooks, and wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown had huge games in a 59-56 win. 8-1 West Virginia fell to both Oklahoma schools in the final 2 weeks, and their season would be over. Oklahoma improved to 11-1 and sat atop the conference. As you can see, their defense didn't get a whole lot better down the stretch. But who would they face in the Big 12 Championship? It came down to a late November game in Austin, and despite quarterback Sam Ehlinger getting injured, the Longhorns prevailed and shut down Iowa State 24-10 to clinch their first Big 12 Championship game appearance since 2009. The Cyclones finished the season 8-4, while 9-3 Texas would square off in a rematch against rival Oklahoma. It was neck and neck for 3 quarters, but that safety would help Oklahoma pull away in the 4th quarter to win 39-27 in a huge game for CeeDee Lamb, who would soon be playing regularly at AT&T Stadium. And for the 2nd straight season, an Oklahoma quarterback was a Heisman winner. Oklahoma, now 4-time defending Big 12 champions, was back in the college football playoff as the number 4 seed. Remember Oklahoma's defensive issues though? It didn't go so well against Alabama and Tua, who steamrolled the Sooners defense. Oklahoma would hire Alex Grinch to be their defensive coordinator heading into next season, and he would at least take strides to improve Oklahoma defensively. As for number 15 Texas, they would square off against number 5 Georgia as 11-point underdogs.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is like a man walking on the moon. Never before. Oh my Lord!
Oh my Lord is correct. Texas, led by Sugar Bowl MVP Sam Ehlinger, would upset Georgia 28-21, and the MVP of the game had something to say about his beloved Longhorn.
We're back!
You gotta give Sam Ehlinger credit. A passionate Longhorn, a great man on and off the field, and a leader who took the program to a higher level than where it was before he got there. Rest in peace to his brother, Jake, by the way, as well as his father who had passed away years before. Wishing Sam the best of luck in the NFL. It's 2019, with Kyler Murray going pro as the number 1 pick in the draft, who, by the way, is the only person to ever be drafted in the first round in both the MLB and NFL. There's a new face in Norman. Transferring from Alabama, quarterback Jalen Hurts. And sorry Sam, Texas was not back. But take a look at their early college game day loss. Ellis who? Turns out this LSU squad wasn't half bad. Remember them for later. Uh-oh. Oklahoma would fall flat against a Kansas State team who would rush for 6 touchdowns. And there was someone new at the throne. Baylor, who would start 9-0. Yeah, Baylor hired some dude in an apron named Matt Rule, and he helped to rebuild the program after the whole sexual assault scandal. Pretty impressive. Baylor would square off against Oklahoma in Waco on college game day, and it was looking like this was Baylor's time to shine, leading 31-10 at halftime. Or not.
You blew it!
Oklahoma would win the second half 24-0 and be victorious 34-31. Oklahoma and Baylor would have a rematch in the Big 12 championship though, and despite Baylor quarterback Charlie Brewer getting injured early on, Baylor's defense showed up and helped the Bears force overtime. However, CeeDee Lamb had yet another big game in AT&T Stadium, and the Sooners would hang on to win and capture their 5th straight Big 12 title. Baylor would lose in the Sugar Bowl to Georgia, who got their revenge against the Big 12, but the Bears still had a very impressive turnaround and came up just short of the Big 12 and potential playoff glory. Thanks to 2 tight wins against Baylor, Oklahoma would finish 12-1, and the Sooners were back in the college football playoff for the 4th time. Quarterback Jalen Hurts put up video game numbers, but it was bad Heisman timing for Hurts. LSU quarterback Joe Burrow and the Tigers were having a historic season, and Oklahoma's defense would be shredded to pieces, losing 63-28 against absolutely dominating performances from Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson. Only 3 teams besides Oklahoma have ever made the playoff 4 or more times: Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, but Oklahoma is the odd one who hasn't won a single playoff game yet. To make matters worse, Oklahoma is the only team in the entire Big 12 to make the playoffs. It's 2020. Oh, great. With the Big 10 and Pac-12 delaying their season and basically only playing half a year, perhaps this is a golden opportunity for the Big 12. Or, by Big 12, do I mean the 5-time defending champs Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts was off to the NFL, but 5-star freshman Spencer Rattler had arrived. What about Texas in his final year with quarterback Sam Ehlinger? Nope, Texas isn't back. And the king of egos and proclaimed offensive genius Tom Herman would be fired.
Herman.
Yeah, look at Tom.
I don't know what that
Just
was.
calling ball plays.
But he's doing the mocking thing too. Texas wins this one.
Go figure. But what about Oklahoma State? Led by quarterback Spencer Sanders, they also returned superstars running back Chuba Hubbard and wide receiver Tylan Wallace for a final season. They had a very deep team, especially defensively, but it wouldn't be Oklahoma State's year either. Remember Iowa State? Quarterback Brock Purdy and head coach Matt Campbell? Had a loaded defense, a deep team, and running back Breece Hall, who would lead the nation in rushing yards, and you got yourself a solid team. In fact,
Easy major there, right?
First down, it's Breece Hall. He doesn't go down. He might go all the way. They finally wrestle him down inside the 10-yard line. What a run by Breece Hall. 36-yard run. Fourth play of 30+. He stays on his feet again and scores. Touchdown, Iowa State. The Cyclones go Rattler's throwing for 301. Looking deep. Looking into double coverage. And he made a critical mistake. It's intercepted.
Iowa State would lose to Oklahoma State and Louisiana Lafayette, who finished 10-1 to be fair, and would go 8-2 to make the Big 12 championship game. Oklahoma, after a very rough start in conference play, losing to Kansas State again at Iowa State and nearly falling to Texas in that quadruple overtime game, would recover, dominate the rest of their slate, and head into the Big 12 championship with a 7-2 record. Unfortunately, with 2 losses apiece, neither team was going to make the college football playoff, but let's have some fun in Jerry World anyway.
Waste your time out with the clock stopped. They're a mess. No, they're going to have to do it. They just do snap it. Didn't look like anybody moved. Purdy, can he rescue this? Purdy lofts it up. Jump ball, and it is intercepted by Trey Brown. Another huge play by the senior from Tulsa. And another critical mistake by Purdy. And you have to put some of that on the sideline.
Nice try, ISU. Oklahoma would win their 6th straight conference title. Iowa State would go on to win the Fiesta Bowl against Pac-12 champion Oregon though, and Oklahoma would crush SEC runner-up Florida 55-20 in the Cotton Bowl. Heading into 2021, these two New Year's Six Bowl champions are expected to be the top 2 contenders in the conference again. And wouldn't it be nice if one of them could get the Big 12 a playoff win? After all, time's running out. Say hello to NILP, where players can finally profit off their own name, image, and likeness. The college football landscape is changing, and the NCAA's power is fading away. Don't be surprised if the Power 5 conferences and its teams form their own football league, whether or not it's a part of the NCAA. All perfect timing for...
Mark it on your calendar because it is now official. July 30th, 2021, Oklahoma and Texas will become members of the SEC. It is a colossal move in the world of college football and college sports in general. Both universities, founding members of the Big 12, they are now leaving their media rights with the Big 12 that ends in 2025. Of course, one of the biggest questions is, will they actually wait that long to join the SEC? Could it be perhaps sooner? And what now happens to the rest of the Big 12?
The Big 12, at least as a Power 5 conference like we know it, is over. The 2 remaining powers of the conference are off to the most powerful conference of all, the SEC, who will become the first ever college football super conference. What is next for the Big 12 without its 2 cash cows? It's likely some members would join forces with teams from the American Athletic, whether that's in the Big 12, the American Athletic, or a new conference formed in some sort of merger. But would that even be a premier conference? Especially with other Power 5 conferences surely looking to keep up with the SEC and expand on their own, some members are bound to get an invite somewhere else. And would you really expect them to decline? The Big 12, as we know it, after a turbulent 25 years, may finally be approaching the end. We'll see what happens, but for now, thanks for watching.